Almost Lost in History, Hammurabi and the House of Knowledge. History is not a burden on the memory, but an illumination of the soul. Don Dearborn Action. Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb. I first encountered Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb on a visit to the DuSable Black History Museum and Education Center in Chicago. His image is on the wall as you enter into the main part of the museum. It took me a while to do some research on him. The research was knowledgeable yet disappointing, as I could not find much information through electronic references. I have high hopes that there is more documentation of him at an education or public institution, such as a library or university. What I did find I will share with you because I believe knowledge is power and history helps to find the future. Who was Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb? Hammurabi's origin. Born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1900 to Robert and Martha Robb, he had two siblings, Beatrice and George. He graduated from Hartford Public High School with honors in 1920. Howard University. Hammurabi received his BA in 1924 from Howard University. He led the debate team and served on the student council and was editor of the weekly publication Hilltop and the annual Bison. He was a member of Kappa, Sigma, and Delta Sigma Phi and served as a cabinet officer for the YMCA. Northwestern Law School. Hammurabi in 1927 received his JD degree at Northwestern University, where he continued his activist work through the debate team membership on the Chicago YMCA Executive Board and presidency of the Washington Intercollegiate Club in Chicago. Hammurabi's Travels. After Volume 1 of the Wonder Books, which we'll talk about later, was published, Hammurabi embarked on a year of study at the London School of Economics in 1928. He became deeply involved in London's active Pan-African movement, forming relationships with African students there and with American Negro explorates. Hammurabi traveled to Vienna and then through Africa, gathering both knowledge and contacts, and then returning to Chicago intent on promoting knowledge of the African component of African American history. Hammurabi also made contact with as many African students and immigrants as possible and joined the West African Students Union. In 1928 through 1929, he founded the International Negro Student Alliance, serving as a director. Hammurabi sharing knowledge. In 1928, Hammurabi returned from his travels and resumed leadership of the Intercollegiate Club, where he oversaw production of the second and even more substantial volume that appeared the following year. The Wonder Books. Under Hammurabi's leadership, the Intercollegiate Club undertook the publication of two treasured books, 1927 Intercollegiate Wonder Book, or The Negro in Chicago, 1779 through 1927. The Wonder Book, The Negro in Chicago, 1779 to 1929. The books are also known as the Intercollegiate Wonder Books, Volumes 1 and 2, 1927 through 1929. The books depicted members of Chicago's growing black middle classes as both educated and activists. Here is a closer look at the two Wonder Books. Next, the Intercollegiate Club. I have a picture here showing some of the members of the Intercollegiate Club in Chicago. Hammurabi devoted his life to searching for knowledge on African American, Afro-Caribbean history. Hammurabi's drive and curiosity led him to learn more about his roots. Hammurabi studied firsthand the realities that people of color were experiencing at the time through his travels, from New York down the Atlantic coast to Florida, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Jamaica, Haiti, and the British West. Bronzeville community. Hammurabi's goal was to spread the knowledge that he had found to the Bronzeville community. Bronzeville was and still is a center for African American life and culture in Chicago. So finally, Hammurabi said, "I'm done with practicing law." In 1931, Hammurabi Robb decided not to continue his law career, citing his delusion and discovery of the profession's central role in the fix white supremacy in the United States. He became involved with promoting the Royal Ashanti singers and dancers in the group's struggle for inclusion in the Century of Progress. He determined to make his life's mission African American enlightenment. So Hammurabi continued to change his name. He changed his name different times. Frederic H. Hammurabi originally went by Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb, but dropped the surname Robb in the 1930s and completely donated himself to African American history. Names used include Philippe H. Hammurabi, Frederic H. Robb, Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb, Frederic H. Hammurabi. So Hammurabi had his travel summaries. Hammurabi shared his travel summaries. Examples of what he found in his travels included Canada's color problem despite being Mecca for fleeing slaves, first-hand knowledge of the plight of the people of color throughout the world. Hammurabi had strong views on higher education for African American youth. His article Have College Students Come of Age, published in the Chicago Defender, shares his viewpoint that African American university students were not being trained to fight against segregation, lynching, and injustice for not only their local communities, but for people of color from other nations. Hammurabi stated, "How will the youth encourage freedom of speech and press on campuses? How to produce as well as consume, eliminate individualism for teamwork, as well as clear up dens of vice, get rid of corrupt politicians, quacks of 100 varieties, and save the race from a perilous and seemingly ruinous future." Hammurabi wrote letters to several influential African Americans such as W.E.B. Du Bois. See one letter dated 1940. So you see that letter in the slide right here. Hammurabi had trouble ahead. Hammurabi and the FBI. The FBI inspected Hammurabi's articles in 1942. Hammurabi was arrested during an FBI raid on sedation charges, along with the following community leaders: Minnie Maud Lena Gordon and her husband William, Sean Jones, David Logan, Stokely Demahart, Charles Newby, Miss Annabelle Moore, James Graves, Elijah Poole, also known as Elijah Muhammad, Lindsay Karen, and the Baha women. In the next few slides, I'll kind of highlight some of the people that Hammurabi was arrested with. First one is Mitty Maud Lena Gordon. She was the president of the Peace Movement of Ethiopia, also known as PME. Next was her husband, William Gordon, and he was just a member of the group that was arrested. I don't have a picture of him. Next, we have Sean Jones, Lindsay Karen, Charles Newby, and I did find a picture of the three of them, and the article's title "Arrest 80 as Pro-Japanese Army Leaders." Next is David Logan. I don't have a picture of him, but I have another article here. Same for Stokely Demahart, no picture, but I have an article which includes his name. Same for Miss Annabelle Moore. I have two more articles. Did not have a picture for James Graves, but he's mentioned in his article right here. I did have a picture of Elijah Poole, also known as Elijah Muhammad, which is the person I did know before I did my research, and he was leader of the Nation of Islam. And here is his picture, as well as the article that shows his name. Also, in some of the articles include draft evasion. Close to 85 community members were also arrested and accused of draft evasion. The group had been practicing passive resistance to the American war effort as a protest of racial discrimination in the United States. And I have an article here talking more about the draft evasion. Here's another article here. It says another Negro fanatic seized as a plot leader. Vindicated, Hammurabi vindicated. Fully vindicated, Hammurabi continued his mission. Or 1942, repression by the U.S. government did not stop Hammurabi from continuing the quest and spread of knowledge throughout African American communities. This level of repression only serves to prove the power that knowledge holds. It can help communities bring themselves up and fight for their own human and civil rights. The House of Knowledge. Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb and the House of Knowledge. Time period for the House of Knowledge was between the 1940s and the 1960s. 1950, Hammurabi was the founder and director of the House of Knowledge, which stood at 3806 South Michigan Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. And here is a picture of the house here. The House of Knowledge. It is rumored that the House of Knowledge was in the carriage house of the home on 3806 South Michigan Ave. The House of Knowledge may have been considered as a bookstore in its time, sharing a knowledge base for the African American community. The House of Knowledge's purpose was to promote Pan-African and Afrocentric study and activism. It's included another picture of the home, which is you can see it's been overgrown with foliage. The House of Knowledge and the DuSable Black History Museum. The home was also the first home of the DuSable Black History Museum for African American history. And here's a picture here of myself at the DuSable Black History Museum. The House of Knowledge's purpose was to spread knowledge or awareness of African American culture and to celebrate the Bronzeville community's African roots and promote Pan African and Afrocentric study and activism. Hammurabi continued until his death in 1978 to publish, lecture, and organize to promote international knowledge and understanding of African American history. Here's an example. This is a Black History calendar published by the House of Knowledge, which was created by F.H. Hammurabi Robb. So this example of that calendar, which has the dates of 1975 through 1976. Here's also another example of Hammurabi Robb continuing his legacy. Little known history, African gifts through the ages in the old and new world, the pocket of knowledge. Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb. So he made this pocket of knowledge um, for African American history. Here's a little snapshot that he did continue his speaking engagements. It's an advertisement for one of Hammurabi's speaking engagement, moving illustration pictures around the world where he was a guest speaker on the topic. So here's another article with two articles showcasing that Hammurabi played a part in Negro History Week. Negro History Week existed before we had Black History Month, so he was one of the people who helped ensure that we actually were recognized and that people just paid tribute and that we rejoiced in who we were and learned more about our culture. So we know that Hammurabi loved to do what he did, and he loved just to showcase that with people, including the youth. So here's another article showing what Hammurabi loved to do and him showcasing that to the youth. And it has a mask in the picture in this article. So in closing, I want to know your thoughts. Have you ever heard of Frederic H. Hammurabi Robb? Have you ever heard of any of the members arrested in 1942? Have you paid a visit to the DuSable Black History Museum? Have you visited Chicago? Please let me know in the comments. Feel free to comment and share any knowledge you may have and just, free to comment, period. But thank you so much for watching.